Welcome to the Treaty One Nation and Winnipeg Art Gallery Past, Present, and Future panel series. I'm your host, Adeline Bird. August 3rd, 2021 marks 150 years of the signing of Treaty One. The Treaty One Nation, along with the T1, DC, TRCM, and Parks Canada, will be hosting the 150th Treaty One commemoration. This panel series will be a three-part series focusing on the past, present, and future of Treaty One, where we will ask our Treaty One guests questions and hear their answers. Today's panel is past, and we are here with knowledge keeper Ray Mason. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome, and it's a pleasure being here too.
You want to introduce yourself to our people here?
Okay, yeah. My name's like you said, Ray Mason, and I'm an elder from Peguis First Nation, which was a part of Treaty One. I also sit on the Elders Council of Treaty One, and I'm an author. I wrote a book called Spirit of the Grassroots People. And I'm a former businessman, consultant. So and I'm also a graduate of the commerce. I have a commerce degree from the University of Manitoba, but that's many years ago. And I've been working since 1986, and it was very hard because, we don't get paid for the work that we do. And when I say we, I mean Spirit Wind, and my little organization that we work in. I was instrumental in the development of the Indian Residential School Agreement, but we helped work from behind the scenes. I was in the House of Commons lobbying for and advocating for survivors, and I was also in the House of Senates. I was also in the Rideau Hall, speaking to the former Governor General Michael Zone, the lady, and it was all in good, we had good results, and I think that was what really triggered the beginning of success for our justice and compensation for our people in the residential school system. Because shortly after that, 3 weeks later, I got a call from Ottawa, from the lead lawyer of the class actions. Spirit Wind was supporting the Baxter case, the Baxter class action, and it was a cloud case that was being considered for validation, a process that needed to happen before the agreement ever happened. So it was a Baxter case that really pushed the cloud case to the position that it would be considered for validation. And incidentally, our lawyers, the lawyer that called me, Darcy Merkel from Toronto, he was the same lawyer for both class actions. He was a lead lawyer for Baxter, and he was a lead lawyer for the cloud case. So it didn't matter. The fact of the matter that I wrote the letter of support to help them win that court case. And then that's where it all started to happen. And then, unfortunately, the day school survivors was not considered in the residential school agreement. So we did a lawsuit in April of 2009 because day school survivors was not considered. And I took this undertaking because the Creator gave me this job back in 1986. And I said I would work for all survivors. I didn't just say residential school survivors or day school survivors or any other survivors. I said survivors, period. and
Right.
and now that's the reason why we have to sue Canada for each different type of school, and that's not fair because, as you know, class actions are very expensive. They're very time consuming, and we're all dying off by the thousands each year.
Mhm.
So this time around, I had a meeting with Honorable Minister Bennett May 12th of this year, and I think we're going to be doing. She was very favorable to, and looking forward to working with us, and in resolving this issue of the rest of the survivors that didn't get anything from both or either one of those agreements, and those are people that went to provincially owned schools, church-owned schools, publicly owned schools, privately owned schools, and sanatoriums. So I'm calling for one agreement, one arrangement to satisfy and so that everybody can get justice no matter what type of school you went to. You see, because Canada, because what they said is that because they're owned by the province and different identities, people didn't qualify. But what I say is that Canada put us there. They put us there, and and they stripped us from our parents, our community, and our family, and our culture. And when you do that, it's not only child abduction, but it's also, they put themselves in a position where when you do that, they have a legal fiduciary obligation for our safety and well-being. And Canada grossly breached that. And so now I'm working toward getting one agreement that would satisfy all these different types of survivors, whether they went to a privately owned school, publicly owned school, or a provincially owned school. So that way we can say that we have complete reconciliation in Canada. Until that happens, there's no complete reconciliation in Canada. So that's what I'm embarking on. My book talks about that. And for all my work, Queen's University, that's where my editors are from, like I said earlier. They embraced my legacy, and they nominated me for an honorary doctorate degree of law. So I'm quite surprised. I just never expected this whatsoever. And I will be receiving my honorary doctorate degree in October, the week of the 12th of this year.
Congratulations.
So I come from a very versatile background. Whatever I do, I don't stop until I complete what I have to do. I finish the job. Let's put it that way.
We have a lot in common. I'm very much the same way, and thank you for sharing all that, because that leads into my first question to you is how would you describe the intent of the treaty signed in 1871?
The intent, the treaty is, as you know, it's a agreement nation to nation, or country to country, whatever, but in this case it's nation to nation, and I believe that the intent is to make arrangements so that we as Native people in Canada can live together, live in harmony, and share our resources of Canada, our land, and for that we were given certain rights, in that of education, and health rights, and medical rights, all these different important rights that we have. And the intent was to work together, live together, and with a spirit of good health and you know the thing is, I, I like when I talked to used to speak to my late grandfather. Incidentally, he's the great grandson of Chief Pegos, and Chief Pegos was one of the signatories of Treaty One. Signatories of Treaty One. So, you know, when he used to talk to me, he says, "We have our rights here, my boy. It's enshrined with the government of Canada," and then he goes on to explain why we have.
Uh-oh.
That.
There we go. Now I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that.
No worries, no worries.
Okay, you know, so the intent of the treaties was to give us, you know, these rights so that we could share our land, our Canada, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I was able to explain.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. It was done in relation. It was done to create relationships. And so I guess my next question to you is, where do you think we are now with these treaties?
Well, you know, and I've been aware of what's going on, and I worked as an advisor for many years with many chiefs throughout Manitoba, and you know, and I also worked on the other side of the fence. I worked with Indian Affairs, on the, you know, and so I noticed all along that our rights and our privileges have been being eroded, slowly being eroded, and it seems like we, for the last, at least the last 150 years, you know, I'm not saying that we're going to celebrate with Canada because of what they want to celebrate. I'm saying that if we're going to celebrate, I think we should celebrate the fact that we survived the oppression and suppression that Canada has been putting us under for the last 100 years, you know, or so, at least 125 years. And because, you know, like I said, as long as we have to depend on public funds, you know, there's always purse strings attached. And attached to those purse strings are conditions. And you break one of those conditions, you know, you don't follow any of one of those conditions, there goes your money, they cut it. You know, so, and like I say, it's a very, very difficult to live under those conditions. You know, and at the same time, we're losing our rights to education, to health, and housing, and living conditions like drinking water. We don't have proper drinking water through a lot of our community throughout Canada. So, you know, I don't. The intent right off from the beginning was good, but it's slowly being gradually being less important, and that's my feeling.
What do you hope people like myself at my age, I'm 37, what do you hope that we do? What work are you hoping we do so that we can make sure that these things don't get eroded, and that we don't fall into a space where our needs aren't being met?
Um, I always said that to help us as Indian people, Native people across Canada, is that we have to have our own self-government, and I always say that in order to have self-government, we need to have an equal share of all resources right across the board, right across Canada, because you cannot have you cannot have self-government without a proper economic development base, and without these resources, we cannot develop our own destiny. Like I said, that way, that we wouldn't have to depend on government funds, government issues, just to survive. Because we're all shortchanged. There's never enough money to satisfy our needs, and shortfalls, like especially in housing, and education, child welfare, and also in the drinking water situation. Like, we don't, like, that has to be really all these different issues, and when you have 2 or 3 families living in one house, it's not healthy. And I wonder why people are getting sick in our community. It's probably the major reason. So I say that our treaties, either we look at them and upgrade them, or do away with the treaties and make a new agreement, new arrangement that would be current with today's economic development base of Canada. Because I think we should abolish or rewrite the Indian Act to our satisfaction, because it's the Indian Act that is really causing a lot of stumbling blocks, and we need to address that, and we need to change the Indian Act, make it more contemporary, so you can't. All those things have to fit in like a puzzle in place before we can have a good standing treaty that we can say it's a good treaty. Right now, it's not a good treaty. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. So looking back at the signing of the treaties, what do you believe our ancestors wanted for the 150 years after signing Treaty 1?
Well, of course, they wanted to make sure that our future, would be looked after. Our safety and our health and well-being would be number one, and that we would have enough land to satisfy what we need in order to make a living. But as it turns out, most of us we got nothing but swampland, rocks.
Yeah.
Can't farm on it.
Can't farm, can't grow food properly.
So, and then and the treaty says that for a family of 5, you get 160 acres. We don't get that. We don't get compensation because of that. And so we need to look at and it has to be both sides have to be willing to work together, willing to understand each other, and look at take a real hard, honest, good look at what needs to be changed in our treaties. What needs to happen in terms of how much land do we need, how much revenue do we need to satisfy all our needs and to be a healthy, going concern community.
Mm.
So that's my opinion of it. Anyway, I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. It does. Thank you. Well, my next question is, this is what I'm excited for. Can you share with us some of your oral teachings you received from family members and knowledge keepers? What was memorable for you when hearing about the treaties, particularly Treaty 1?
Just a very young child. When I was, my grandfather was the last hereditary chief of our reserve. And like I said, he was the great grandson of Chief Peguis. Chief Peguis being one of the signatories of Treaty 1. And I really was proud to hear that. And I was really excited. And, and my grandfather and father used to share a lot of things. Like, for instance, he brought Christianity to our community here. He built our first chapel in this community, and it's still standing. His house burned down, but the chapel is still standing. Where we used to go to Sunday school, we used to go to church. People would convene there every Sunday, and I was when I first heard about our treaties, I felt to be honest with you, at first I felt secure. That our people, we're going to have enough land, we're going to have enough this, enough of that, to carry on and live a good life, a good healthy life that would help Canada be a better country. And but as time went on, and when I got older, I saw that it happened to me. Like, for instance, you can't get this, you can't get that. In terms of medical supplies, or this is no longer covered. Like, for instance, if you need false teeth, your false teeth is only good for 5 years or something like that. And if you break or have an accident in the meantime, you got to go 5 years before you can get another set of teeth, or else pay for it yourself. That was never mentioned like that in our treaties. And another thing too, I wanted to say is that our $5 bill today, to me, it's just a joke. It's a token. Because back in those days, 150 years ago, $5 was like $500 today. And and we never there was never any consideration for parity. The parity of the $5 bill today, as compared to what it is today, in those days. So I think that's another thing that should be looked at. Because
how much do you think, what $5 equated back in those days, how much do you think that would equate to today?
I would say around anywhere from 300 to 500. Okay. If you look at the inflation rate over the years, and when I spoke about it one time, I was told that it was never considered in the treaty agreement. But you know what? Common sense tells you that even when like for instance the old age and the pension and all that, there was never an agreement made up for that. But still, without an agreement, we get increments. It raises, and why can't our $5 bill do the same? So then when I saw other communities across Canada. You know, our land was typically the same. And I thought, oh my goodness, and then when I seen that they stuck us in a certain area of land, and we had to stay there. There was one time we couldn't leave our community, we couldn't leave our reserve without permission. We couldn't vote. Like we're considered, I would say, locked in prisoners in our own community at that time. So I thought we had a treaty that would give us all these rights to be free, to be able to do what we want to do and need to do, and to work with our fellow men, Canada, the rest of Canada, so that we could understand and work together and give us better living conditions, better conditions but it seems like it's all going downhill, and we have to argue, we have to fight, and we have to kick and do everything to try and get a satisfactory arrangement or agreement. That's why I say we have to redo our treaties, rewrite them, or do away with it altogether, and let's establish another relationship, another treaty relationship of some sort.
A new relationship. Yeah.
Eh?
A new relationship.
Yeah. And my grandfather was proud to tell me what he was saying at that time. But, even him, he didn't realize what was happening in front of all of us. Like I said, it's gradually. And a lot of this stuff, a lot of our rights are being taken away without consultation. It's arbitrarily done. And that's not fair. That's not right. We got to be part of every major decision to ratify it first, and that has never happened as far as I can see. But anyway, that's my take on that.
And do you share all this stuff with your children and your grandchildren?
When I get the opportunity, yes.
Yeah.
And I also we used to have what they call a elders program in our school here, and I was one of the elders. I'd go and speak to the grades 5, 6, 7-year-old different grades, and even the lower grades would go and speak to them, tell them about our history, our legacy. And believe it or not, our young kids, they think you're crazy, because it's impossible. How could you live in log homes and have to carry your water and have oil lamps for light, and they wouldn't believe us. And I tell them, what? When we went to school, we had to walk to school. We had to carry our books to school, and there was no such thing as picking us up at the door and dropping us off at the door, and you coming in your school building, flick a switch and you got light, turn a button and you got heat. No, when we went to school, we had to chop our own wood and make a fire, and then we'd sit in our classroom, So, but they're learning, and it's a good feeling when you run into a child after you spend some time talking to them in their classes, and say, oh, Mr. Mason, why come you not come visiting us, seeing us anymore? So
young people are the best, always.
Yeah. So we have to teach our children.
Sorry?
So we have to continue to teach our children about our legacy.
Yeah. Well, that actually goes into my next question to you is, what would you like young people to know and take away from storytelling, our storytelling of the treaties?
what I would like our children to know.
Yeah, young people, even people like myself. I still figure myself as young.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I would like to see our children learn is, first of all, learn the Indian Act, look at the treaties itself, and then look at what is really out there. Like, it says we can have this, can have that, but when you look at it, is it real? Because what they say in the treaty today is much different than what happens according to our wants and needs. For instance, if you need a certain type of pills, like Tylenol extra strength, for instance. If you need that, they'll prescribe it and they'll cover it if the doctor prescribes that. But if you run out in the meantime, you gotta wait until the next.
I'm a old-time educator. I was a principal, so anybody that walked into my school should know their treaty, which is Treaty 1.
And what school were you a principal at?
Sagging High School.
Oh, okay. And how long have you been there for?
Well, I was there for 5 years. And before that, I worked for the Assembly of First Nations. And before that, I was a counselor at Assiniboine College. And prior to that, I was working with elders. And I worked with the province of Manitoba. So I always worked in education and trying to promote what the young kids should know, their treaties, and who they are, and how they're connected to the land, and they are the people who own this whole area. And so those were the areas that we talked about and I worked with elders across the country from all the treaties, the 10 treaties, and the ones from down east. So I've done my share as an elder. I've done my share with people across the country. I've worked with incredible elders from across the country, from BC to Nova Scotia, and they all knew their treaties and so on. And I know that our Treaty 1, because I'm from Sagging, and I've been there for forever. So in my day, going to boarding school, before boarding school, I mean, the elders would tell us about our treaty, but only in the language. Because at the time of treaties, our people didn't speak English, or they understood some. So and they spoke in our own language, which is Ojibwe. Anishinaabe tall.
So maybe
they were the ones that were talking about the treaties all the time, but in the language.
Well, one of the first questions is, what was the intent of the treaties? Do you want to sort of speak to that, Ruth?
Intent by whom? By the people that were coming from across the sea, or the intent by our people?
You can
both,
speak to both.
Ruth, if I can intercept you, it's the people that signed the signatures of the treaties, and that is the representatives of the Queen and our leadership, our chiefs.
Pinego. You know, I'll tell you, I know that there was two groups of people, but the people that came over here, what were they looking for? They didn't have land to look at treaties with. They didn't have anything. They were looking for land. But our people already had their land and they had their territories. And they had their language and their customs and everything else back then. And so if you want to find out how the Anishinaabe people talked about how the treaty will be, they said, as long as the sun shines, the grass grows and the river flows. That's how long that treaty will be. And that's what they talked about all the time as I was growing up in Saging. They have to know what that means, which means when you do an agreement with someone who wants something from you, the elders, the old people used to say, we will sit with you. And you have to remember back then, our treaty chiefs or the treaty people, they only spoke Anishinaabe. They didn't speak English. And they had interpreters there who were probably half-breeds. So they say in books. But there were a lot of areas that they talked about. But in particular, the land, the water, and the sun. It has meaning. And so when you're talking about treaties, it's forever. It never goes away, because if the sun goes, okay, fine. If there's no more water, okay, fine. If there's no more trees and so on, then it's gone. But as long as the sun shines, the water flows, and the grass grows, that's how long our treaties will be. That's what they based it on.
Sun is still shining.
They spoke in their language. And they knew where they were from and they knew what their territory was. And so that was the first treaty with these people that were wandering around. I guess you call them the white people. They were looking for land. And they wanted land, free land. And so by that time there was a government. And they came and they took the land that they wanted and they were given that. And if you look at Selkirk, for example, you're looking at treaties, study that treaty, Treaty 1, as it pertains to Selkirk. All my relatives were living there. And they were, I don't know what I should say, but I think, well, I know they did. They were thrown out of there so that the white people could come in and be on that good land. And they were sent to where Peguis is right now.
Yeah.
Swamp, rock, and no uncultivated land.
My uncle Sam Favel always said, when we went over there, it is a place of hell. When they were pushed out of Selkirk, and they had that land full of all kinds of water, dirty water, whatever. It was swamp. It was swampland. And they had to stay there. So they did the best that they could. Today it's called Peguis. Treaty 1. Still Treaty 1. But here in Selkirk, all the people that came from across the ocean, they benefited from all that good land that was there. My granny had land there. My uncles had land there. And they had to go.
Ruth, can I add that how the white man got that land was
Go ahead.
they did not explain to our people properly on like all they said is people that want I don't know how much money, but I think it was $5. If people that want $5 go on this side of the building, and the other ones, if you don't want, stay where you're at, you know. And it was never fully explained why that process was established and carried out that way. So in other words, Canada, the people of Canada, or their representatives, they deceitfully stole our land, and you know, and never explained why properly, and why they carried that process out that way, and everybody thought it was just for money, but they didn't know that they were actually voting on giving up our land. See, our land started from North Winnipeg right through to East Selkirk on both sides of the river, and we had to forfeit that because we didn't realize that, and so some of our people went to Brokenhead, some of our people went to Fort Alec, and some went to Rose River too, I think, Bruce?
Yes, tagging was always there.
Yeah, it was there, but I think about 3 or 4 families joined the community there, and the Princes and Thomases, they moved to Brokenhead, and then Thomases and I forget what, there was some other family.
Well, they're all the Smiths.
Yeah.
Happy Smiths. That was my granny's nephew. The Smiths.
Where were they from? Were they from Scotland, or where were they from that came on that side?
Scotland. Those white people?
Yeah, like where did they come from?
They came from, I guess,
England.
Scotland.
England,
okay.
Scotland.
Who knows?
Yeah, they came. I believe it's from England.
Okay.
England, from the British Isles, right?
Pardon me?
A little bit here and there.
Yeah, because it is Queen of England. Don't forget that first initiated our treaties and our sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and when England broke away from Canada, the sovereignty was broken, and Canada agreed to continue and uphold the treaties that was created and set up by the Queen of England and her heirs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing that you have to remember, they were getting free land.
Yeah.
That's the area that you should be looking at and research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was looking at Rolling River, and it was a lot of the
states for that land.
Sorry, say it again?
I said that's what you should research.
Yeah.
How much did they pay for that land in Selkirk? That was good land. My granny, all my relatives lived there. And some hid when they didn't want to go to Peguis. my mom's people. And so the other part that for Treaty 1, Sagin has always been in that area because that was their territory. Sagin and Broken Head, all that area. And my dad, John Crishane, his how they got into treaty was through my great grandmother, who was she had pure Indian blood, because in those days, if you're going to go into a treaty, once the treaty was signed, you had to have a full-blood mother. You have to look at women. They were the ones that were very important, because my granny on the Crishane side, Genevieve Kennard was her name. And she came from Ontario, that area. Because all that territory was all Anishinaabe, way back in the day. And when my dad, he didn't take treaty, just my granny, my great grandmother, I should say, and her 5 sons and her 3 daughters. They were Crishanes. And when my grandmother, Genevieve Kennard, they used to live in St. Boniface because she got sick and they came to Sagin. And so her siblings, her sister sat with the chief and council for a week, and they deliberated. So because it was the women were the ones that were in charge of treaties.
Wow.
So she got in her 5 Crishane boys and 3 Crishane girls. They took Treaty 1 there at Sagin. See all the Crishanes now.
There's lots of them.
My great grandfather never took treaty. He left and lived outside of the reserve.
Would you like young people to know and take away from our storytelling of the treaties?
Well, I would like, sorry, but they have to know the whole truth about treaties. Like there's all kinds of books and so on. There's oral stories. Right now, the younger people they know treaties. They have a treaty number, they get money. But what was the intent? The young people, in my opinion, it's nobody else's opinion. The Monials is what we call them in our language. They wanted free land. And that's the intent of why the treaties were signed by the Monials, by the people from over there, over the ocean. Digo chicken do tani sabinon chiak. Ani gabi se sek. Ogumagagi tago shinot. Kangego ke asion. Yetianish kisa nagan wino gayawat. And why I'm saying it in the language, in my opinion, is that our young people have to know the language. And every single reserve and so on, they have to teach the kids through their language what came about of why we have reserves and reservations, as they call it. Why are we in little plots of land, and why were some put in different lands? That's what the kids have to know. And first, they have to know their language. 2, they have to know their history. And that's the most important part of it. Myself as an educator for the last 50 years.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I add something, if you don't mind?
Yeah, of course.
What I like to say is that through everything, we Canada has quietly and deceitfully been working, and that was to, like I said earlier, to rid the Indian problem, and take the Indian out of the child, and by using the colonial educational system, whether it be a residential school or day school or whatever type of school, provincially owned school, the intent was to take the Indian out of the child. And a lot of us lost our language. One of the most important elements of our culture. And I, for one, I did lose my language. I had it beaten out of me, and I'm trying to learn it as time goes on. Even at my age, I have to learn it, and I want to know it before I pass on. So we have to know also. We have to know what happened to us as Anishinaabe people in the residential school systems, the colonial educational system. That's why I labeled that as, and it has weakened our culture. It's weakened us as people. It made us a different type of Anishinaabe, and we've got to teach our children that. And it's so important to try and learn our language today, and like Ruth said, we got to learn about our treaties, and to learn how can we live and how can we work with our Demonia, how can we work with them, because those treaties have to be continuously visited and looked at. Keep it updated, just like how they do with everything else. They do that except for our treaties, and like I said, our treaties are being eroded. Our rights are being eroded. I see someday that we may not have a treaty the way things are going. Because we need to have our leadership to work on the continuance and upgrading our treaty rights. Because today our leadership is so busy lobbying and fighting for our living rights, our living what we need to live. Our chiefs shouldn't have to be going lobbying and fighting for our doorknobs, our windows, our doors, or whatever we need for our homes. They have people working. They should be doing that, not the chiefs. The chiefs should be looking after our treaty and Aboriginal rights. Thanks.
Thank you both. That was a great snapshot into the past and historical storytelling of treaties and Treaty 1. Where can people get more information?
There's lots of places you can get information.
Yeah.
Do you know? Can you give us some good insight?
Go ahead. You can get it from any of the reserves. You can get it in Ottawa, from Indian Affairs, or what they'll give you.
Yeah, you can go online. You can go online too.
Yeah.
And there's lots of information out there. It's just to find it and study it and read it.
Yeah. Assembly of First Nations have a lot of of material on the treaties alone. And the prior to the treaties, the treaty numbered treaties. You'd have to look also in BC. You have some treaties there.
Yeah.
And look prior to Treaty 1. So Assembly of First Nations would have a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then each area would give you information.
You know, Ruth, do you remember the TAR committee that used to be? Yeah. You know, they need to bring that back.
I get.
You know that the TAR committee was set up to do research and on our treaty and Aboriginal rights, and make reports to our people, to our leadership.
Keep data.
Yeah.
And Canada stopped that because they stopped the funding, and because I guess they were getting too powerful. But we need to bring that back.
Yeah.
Well, what about those the Treaty Commission? They have a lot of information. The Treaty Commission. Loretta
Treaty Relations Manitoba.
Yeah, and there's one in Saskatchewan.
Okay.
So you'd have a lot of information there.
But I guess we have to go beyond the information. We have to have people that would advise our leadership and work with our leadership to be able to uphold and do better with our treaty rights, like to negotiate, or like I don't like the word negotiate, because the minute you say negotiate, you're opening the door for Indian Affairs to get their foot in the door, and then what is there to negotiate? When you have a treaty, there's nothing to negotiate. It's there already.
Right.
Exactly.
We should be talking about on how can we implement and uphold our treaties, not negotiate.
Yeah.
And I always told our chief, that word makes me mad. I get upset because you're allowing them to come and get their way with what they want on their agenda. Anyway, that's my words, or my story.
Thank you both for your time. Thank you so much again, Ray and Ruth. For up-to-date information, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and check out our website for a list of events. Thanks for watching.